I used to think I had one of those boring, stable marriages people don't write posts about. You know the type? Two adults, one apartment that's always missing one light bulb somewhere, a shared grocery list, and arguments that start with, "Did you seriously put the wet towel on the bed?" and end with, "Okay, fine, I'm sorry," because neither of us is trying to win the Nobel Prize in pettiness. We'd been together long enough that love wasn't fireworks anymore. It was routine, comfortable, predictable. The kind where you can tell what mood your wife is in just by how aggressively she closes the kitchen cabinets. And for the record, I liked that. Life had been a little heavier lately. Work was exhausting. Money wasn't tight, but it wasn't loose either. And intimacy, let's call it what it was, had become rare. Not gone, just rationed. Like it was a government-issued resource, and she was worried we'd run out before winter. But I didn't make a big tragic opera out of it. People go through phases. Stress happens. Hormones happen. Life is not a romance movie where everyone has perfectly timed candlelight and zero laundry. So when my wife came into the living room that night, I had no idea my brain was about to get hit with a plot twist I didn't ask for. It was an ordinary evening, the kind you forget the next day. I was half watching a show I didn't care about. She was hovering near the doorway like she wanted to speak but wasn't sure if she wanted to commit to the full sentence. I paused the TV because I'm not an animal. "What's up?" I asked. She didn't sit, she didn't smile, she didn't even do that dramatic, "we need to talk" thing people do when they want to feel like a main character. She just said it. "I'm pregnant." That's it. 2 words. No build-up, no cute box with a tiny onesie, no guess-what game. Just a verbal grenade tossed calmly into the room. I blinked once, then my entire body reacted before my brain could catch up. I stood up so fast I nearly knocked over my drink. I laughed, like an idiot, and went to her. "Wait, seriously?" I said, already grinning. She nodded, and her expression was weird. Not sad, not happy, just tight, controlled, like she was holding her face in place. I didn't notice it properly in the moment because my heart was sprinting. I hugged her, the real kind, arms around her, pulling her close. I lifted her slightly off the floor like I was starring in a wholesome commercial. "We're having a baby," I said, like repeating it would make it real. She let out a small breath. Her hands patted my back, not really hugging me back. More like acknowledging my existence, which sounds dramatic now, but in the moment I just thought, shock, hormones, overwhelm. I pulled back to look at her. "Okay," I said, already planning our next 10 years in my head. "Okay, when did you find out?" "Today," she said. "And you're sure?" She gave me a look that said, I peed on a stick, not a philosophy thesis. "Yes, I'm sure." I laughed again, not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do with the sudden surge of emotion. I started talking in that excited, slightly manic way people talk when something huge happens and they can't sit still. "Okay, so we'll need to, like, the doctor and vitamins and, wow, I mean, we should probably start looking at." I stopped myself before I began naming nursery paint colors like a lunatic. She watched me, her eyes flicking away like she was trying not to let me see something. "What?" I asked. "Are you okay? You seem—" "I'm fine," she said quickly. Too quickly. I softened my voice. "Hey, this is good, right?" She nodded again. "Yes, it's good." But her shoulders were tense, and my brain did a small, quiet note-taking gesture in the background like, "Interesting. File that away for later." I didn't push. I wasn't going to be that guy who turns a pregnancy announcement into an interrogation. We ate dinner. We talked about normal stuff. She asked me something about work. I answered like a person pretending he wasn't about to become someone's father. And when I went to bed that night, I stared at the ceiling with that stupid, warm feeling in my chest. I kept thinking, this is it. This is the thing that makes everything feel meaningful again. Because yeah, things had been a little strained, and yeah, our closeness had been inconsistent. But a baby? A baby felt like a new chapter, a reset, a reason. The next few days were full of those small, surreal moments where you keep forgetting, then remembering, and your heart does that little flip. I caught myself looking at her differently, softer, protective. I started noticing stupid things like, she's drinking water more, she's tired earlier, she's not eating that one food she usually likes. It felt real. Then came the first ultrasound. I wanted to go, obviously. I wanted to be there, to see the tiny blob on the screen, to hold her hand, to do the whole classic future dad thing. She didn't argue about me coming, at least not yet. She just said, sure, in a tone that sounded like she was allowing me to accompany her to the DMV. The clinic smelled like disinfectant and muted anxiety. The waiting room was full of couples doing that awkward, we're excited but we're trying to act normal vibe. I sat next to her, knee bouncing. She stared at her phone, scrolling like this was a dentist appointment. I leaned in. You okay? She didn't look up. I tried to lighten it. I'm gonna cry, you know. That got a tiny smirk. A half second, then gone. They called us back. The room was dim. The tech was polite in that professional way, like she'd seen 1,000 of us and still had to pretend each one was special. My wife lay back, shirt up, that gel on her belly that looks like someone spilled cold slime. The tech started moving the wand around, clicking buttons, making that serious face medical people make when they're concentrating. Then the doctor came in to review. He looked at the screen, measured something, typed something, nodded. Okay, he said casually. So based on what I'm seeing, you're measuring at about 9 weeks. 9 weeks wasn't impossible. It just didn't match the nights I remembered. Or the ones I didn't. My smile didn't drop. I didn't gasp. I didn't do anything dramatic. I just blinked. Again. Because I'm not a calendar-obsessed freak. I'm not a private investigator. But I am a functioning adult with a memory. And I knew the last few months hadn't exactly been a non-stop honeymoon. The doctor kept talking, explaining how measuring can vary, how things can be off, how due dates are estimates. And I nodded along like a normal husband, because I wasn't going to start waving my arms yelling objection like I was in court. I looked at my wife. She was already watching me, not with warmth, with readiness, like she'd expected this moment, like she was waiting to see if I'd react. The doctor left us with the printout. The tech cleaned up. The room got quiet. I held the ultrasound photo in my hand, that grainy black and white image that's supposed to make you feel awe, but mostly looks like a weather radar screenshot. I tried to smile. Well, there it is. She nodded. I kept my voice light. So it's measuring a little ahead? It happens, she said instantly. No hesitation, no uncertainty. Yeah, I said slowly. I've heard that. It's just a bit more than I thought. She looked me dead in the eyes and delivered it like a rehearsed line. Doctors are often wrong about dates. That's normal. I let out a soft laugh. Right, sure. And maybe I should have pressed. Maybe I should have asked questions. Maybe I should have demanded some timeline like a detective in a bad TV show. But I didn't. Because at that point, I still wanted to believe my life was boring. I still wanted this to be the kind of story that doesn't end up on the internet. So I did what most husbands do when something feels weird but not yet undeniable. I swallowed it. I put it on a mental shelf. And I told myself, don't be that guy. Don't turn joy into suspicion. Don't ruin this. We walked out of the clinic together. She held the printout carefully, like it was fragile. I watched her face as we crossed the parking lot. She wasn't glowing. She was tense. And I remember thinking, very quietly, very privately, why do you look like you're bracing for impact? That night, I put the ultrasound picture on the kitchen counter like a symbol, like proof that everything was moving forward. And I stood there for a long moment, staring at it, trying to make the numbers in my head stop lining up the wrong way. Because here's the problem with just be positive advice. Your brain doesn't stop doing math just because you want to feel happy. And mine had already started adding things up. even if I wasn't ready to say it out loud. After the ultrasound, something subtle shifted. Not dramatically, no slammed doors, no icy silence. Nothing you could point at and say, uh-huh, that's it. It was quieter than that, more procedural. The first thing she did was start managing information, not lying, not exactly hiding, just controlling the flow. A few days later, she mentioned her next appointment while scrolling on her phone. "I'll go alone this time," she said casually. I looked up. "Oh, okay. Why?" She shrugged, still scrolling. "It's just women's stuff. You don't really need to be there for all of it." The words were soft. The meaning wasn't. I waited a second. "I mean, I want to be there." She finally looked at me. "I know, but I need some space with this. I need to do it my way." Her way. Interesting phrasing, considering we were allegedly creating a human together. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because this was still early enough that pushing would have made me look like a paranoid asshole. "All right," I said, "if that's what you need." She smiled. A relieved smile. Not a grateful one. That should have bothered me more than it did. Then came the tests, blood work, checkups, all the fun stuff that turns pregnancy into a full-time admin job. "I'll handle the labs myself," she said one morning while tying her shoes. "You sure?" I asked. "I can come with you." She shook her head. "No, it's fine. I've got it." Every sentence had the same shape. Not "don't come," just "you don't need to." And that distinction mattered, because it let her feel reasonable while slowly removing me from the picture. I wasn't being pushed away. I was being optimized out. At some point, I realized I wasn't asking follow-up questions anymore, because every time I did, the air got heavier. Not angry, just tense, like I was bringing static into a room that was trying very hard to stay calm. So I stopped. I told myself the same comforting lies men have been telling themselves for centuries. "She's pregnant. Don't be difficult. This isn't about you. Be supportive." And for a while that worked. Until it didn't. One night she fell asleep early. I stayed up. Not brooding, not spiraling, just awake. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water and my phone face down, like I was about to interrogate it. I wasn't emotional. That's the part people get wrong. This wasn't a dramatic breakdown moment. It was quiet, almost boring. And that's what made it dangerous. I started counting. Not obsessively, not frantically, methodically. I pulled up the calendar. I didn't count times we were together. I counted the gaps, the weeks where nothing happened, the nights that ended with, "I'm tired. Not tonight. Maybe tomorrow." The weeks where tomorrow never came. I wasn't angry while I did it. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was checking my memory. Because if my memory was wrong, this whole uneasy feeling would collapse under its own weight. So I counted again. Different angle. Same dates. Again. Same result. 9 weeks. 9 weeks meant a specific window. And that window was empty. Not fuzzy. Not uncertain. Empty. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. "Maybe I'm overthinking," I said out loud, to no one. I counted again anyway, because that's what you do when you're calm but not convinced. And every time I landed in the same place. You can forget arguments. You can forget routines. You can forget random weekdays. But you remember absence. And I remembered it clearly. Still, I didn't say anything. Because saying something would have turned a quiet calculation into a loud accusation, and I wasn't ready for that yet. I decided to wait. Not because I was afraid, because I wanted to be sure. And the weird thing? She seemed to feel it. Not that I was counting, but that something in me had shifted. She started watching me more closely, checking my face when certain topics came up, like she was measuring me now. One evening she asked, "You've been quiet lately." I smiled. "Just tired." She studied me for a second longer than necessary, then nodded. "Okay." But the word "okay" landed with weight. like a question mark pretending to be a period. That night, lying in bed, staring at the dark, I thought, if I'm wrong, this will all disappear. And if I'm not. I didn't finish the thought. Not yet. I didn't plan the DNA test comment. This wasn't some dramatic confrontation I rehearsed in the shower like a deranged TED Talk. It came out naturally, casually, almost lazily, which, in hindsight, made her reaction impossible to miss. We were in the kitchen. Nothing cinematic. No rain. No music swelling in the background. She was cutting vegetables. I was leaning against the counter, scrolling through my phone, half listening to something she was saying about a coworker I didn't care about. The mood was fine, neutral, functional. I said, I did a little math and somehow the pregnancy period doesn't add up in my head. She kept chopping vegetables like we were talking about the weather. You're overthinking it, she said. Doctors often make mistakes. I know, I replied. I'm not saying anything's wrong. Then why are you making it weird? She asked, not looking at me. I'm not, I said calmly. I just like things to make sense. She sighed, sharp and annoyed. You need to trust me. There it was. I nodded slowly. I do. She turned toward me. Then stop analyzing everything. I gave a small shrug, keeping my tone light. Okay, I said. And if it ever comes down to it, we'll just do a DNA test. Problem solved. I even smiled when I said it, like it was obvious. I paused, just enough to make it land softly. Technology's crazy now. It's basically standard. I even shrugged. I wasn't accusing her. I wasn't demanding anything. I was giving her an easy out. A normal reaction would have been one of these: a laugh, an eye roll, a sarcastic, wow, you're dramatic. Even mild annoyance would have been fine. What I got instead was immediate. She froze. Her shoulders went tight like I just yelled something obscene instead of speaking in a conversational tone. Slowly, she turned her head. Her face didn't look confused. It looked alert. What? She said. I smiled a little more, instinctively trying to keep things light. I'm kidding. Mostly. I mean, it's not a big deal. Her jaw clenched. Why would you even say that? She asked. There it was. Not curiosity. Defense. I tilted my head. Say what? That, she snapped. That thing about a test. I held up my hands. Hey, I wasn't accusing you of anything. Relax. That word, relax, was a mistake. She put the knife down harder than necessary. So you don't trust me? She said. The volume didn't rise. The intensity did. That's not what I said, I replied calmly. I literally said worst case. She crossed her arms. Normal men don't joke about DNA tests. I blinked. Normal men don't joke about a lot of things. Doesn't mean they're guilty. She stared at me like I'd just failed some moral exam. You know how insulting that is? She said. I exhaled through my nose. I know how insulting it would be if I were accusing you, which I'm not. She shook her head. This says a lot about you. There it was. We were no longer talking about the test. We were talking about me. I'm not trying to start a fight, I said. I just said it out loud. Well, maybe think before you speak, she snapped. Because that kind of thinking is toxic. Toxic. Great. We were speed-running buzzwords now. I leaned back against the counter, folding my arms, not defensively, just mirroring her posture. So let me get this straight, I said evenly. A hypothetical test, mentioned casually, is enough to turn me into a bad person? Her eyes flashed. If you can even think like that, then yes. That's a problem. I let that sit between us. Because something in her reaction didn't match the situation. It wasn't hurt. It wasn't confusion. It was fear, dressed up as outrage. And that's when it clicked. If this child were unquestionably mine, that comment would have been a joke. A stupid one, maybe, but harmless. Instead, it landed like a threat. I softened my tone, not for her, but for myself. Look, I said, I'm not accusing you. I'm not demanding anything. I was making a point about how normal this stuff is now. She scoffed. Normal for men who assume the worst. I smiled. Not because it was funny, because clarity is strangely calming. Okay, I said. Let's drop it. She looked surprised, like she expected me to keep pushing. Instead, I turned and picked up my phone. Conversation over. But inside, something had shifted permanently. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel jealous. I felt confirmed. Because here's the thing. People who have nothing to hide don't panic at hypotheticals. They laugh. They tease you. They say, go ahead, do the test. Frame the results. They don't turn it into a character assassination. That night she barely spoke to me. And when she did, it was clipped. Careful. As if every word was being filtered. She went to bed early. I stayed up again. I didn't need proof yet. I already had something better. A reaction that made no sense, unless there was something to lose. After that kitchen conversation, the temperature in the apartment dropped a few degrees. Not enough to complain about, enough to notice. She didn't bring up the DNA test again. Neither did I. On the surface, life continued in that careful, polite way couples adopt when something uncomfortable is sitting between them like an unexploded device. But the rules changed, subtly, strategically. She became distant in a way that was hard to call out without sounding dramatic. Less eye contact, shorter answers, conversations that ended before they started. And whenever I tried to bring up anything related to the pregnancy, appointments, plans, logistics, I got the same response, just phrased differently each time. You're stressing me out. Stress isn't good for the baby. Can we not talk about this right now? Interesting how this was always undefined. It wasn't the pregnancy. It was me. At some point I realized something uncomfortable. She wasn't afraid of conflict. She was afraid of questions. And pregnancy had become the perfect shield. Any concern I raised could be reframed as an attack. Any curiosity became pressure. Any calm request turned into emotional violence. One night I asked, "Did you get the blood work results back?" Her response was immediate. Why? The question wasn't curious. It was defensive. No reason, I said. Just checking. She exhaled sharply. You really need to stop hovering. This isn't helping. I leaned back in my chair. I'm asking one question. And that's one too many, she snapped. Then catching herself, she softened her tone. I just need peace right now. Peace. Funny word, considering how tense the room felt. After that, I stopped asking. Not because I felt guilty, because I was watching. And when you stop talking, people tend to reveal themselves. She started spending more time on her phone, taking calls in the other room, lowering her voice when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't suspicious. I was attentive. One afternoon, I came home earlier than expected. No drama, no surprise stakeout. I just forgot my charger. As I walked down the hallway, I heard her voice. Low, fast, tight. She was on the phone. I didn't stop to listen. I was already passing by when a sentence cut through the air and hooked itself into my spine. He started talking about a test. I slowed. Just a little. Not enough to be obvious. Her voice dropped even lower. No, of course not, she said. But it can't happen. I stood still. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. Everything inside me went very, very quiet. If he does a test, it's over, she continued. I know him. He'll leave. There it was. Not he'll be hurt. Not he won't trust me. He'll leave. She paced, judging by the sound of her steps. I can't let that happen, she said. Not right now. She paused, listening. Then, no, I don't care what he thinks. I just need to keep this under control. I leaned against the wall, still calm, still breathing, waiting for the line that would save everything. The one where she'd say, because it's his child. It never came. Instead, she said, if he pushes this, the marriage is done. I felt something settle into place. Not anger, not betrayal, certainty. I stepped forward, letting my footsteps make noise this time. Her voice stopped mid-sentence. I walked into the room. She looked up at me like a deer that had miscalculated the distance to the road. "Oh," she said too quickly. "You're home." I nodded. "Forgot my charger." She swallowed. "I was just talking to my sister." "About what?" I asked. My tone was neutral, almost bored. She blinked. "What?" "Your call," I said. "What was it about?" Her mouth opened, closed. She shrugged. "Nothing important." I smiled faintly. Okay. That was it. No accusations, no raised voice, no dramatic reveal. Because at that point, I didn't need answers. I had already heard everything that mattered. She watched me carefully for the rest of the evening, like she was recalculating. I didn't confront her that night. Not because I was scared, because timing matters. And I wanted the next conversation to be very clear. I didn't confront her right away. Not because I needed time to cool off. I was already cold. I waited because I wanted the conversation to happen when we were both fully awake, fully aware, and with no room for theatrical misunderstandings. The next evening, she was on the couch, scrolling. The TV was on, muted. One of those shows people watch without watching. I stood in the doorway for a second, then walked in and sat across from her. She glanced up. "What's wrong?" Interesting choice of words. "Nothing's wrong," I said. "We need to talk." She stiffened. "About what?" I gave a small smile. "You know." She sighed like I was asking her to explain quantum physics after a long day. "This again?" she said. "I thought we were done with this." "We're not," I replied calmly. Her eyes narrowed. "You're stressing me out." There it was, the shield. "I'm not raising my voice," I said. "I'm not accusing you. I'm not even emotional. So let's not use pregnancy as a way to shut the conversation down." That got her attention. She sat up straighter. "Excuse me?" "I'm allowed to speak," I continued. "And I'm going to." Silence stretched between us. Not awkward. Focused. "I heard your phone call," I said. Her face changed instantly. Not confusion. Calculation. "What phone call?" she asked. "You said if I did a DNA test it would be over. That I'd leave." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "That's not what I meant," she said finally. "Okay," I replied. "Then explain what you meant." She rubbed her temples. "You're taking things out of context." "I heard enough context," I said. "What I didn't hear was you saying the child is mine." She snapped her head up. "Because that shouldn't even be a question." "And yet," I said, "here we are." Her voice rose. "This is exactly what I was talking about. You're turning this into something ugly." "No," I said. "I'm turning it into something clear." She stood up, pacing now. "You have no idea what stress does during pregnancy." I nodded. "I do, which is why I'm being very careful with my words." She stopped pacing and pointed at me. "You're destroying this moment for me." I looked at her, really looked at her. "You already destroyed it," I said quietly. "I'm just acknowledging it." She stared at me, stunned. I stood up. Here it was, the line, the one I'd already crossed internally. "I'm not accusing you of cheating," I said. "I'm not calling you names. I'm not demanding confessions." She crossed her arms. "Then what do you want?" I met her eyes. "A DNA test." Her breath caught. "Without it," I continued, "I won't accept this child as mine." Her face flushed. "You can't do that." "I can," I said. "And I am." She shook her head, incredulous. "That's insane." "No," I replied. "What's insane is expecting me to ignore basic reality." She laughed, sharp and humorless. "So what? You're just going to abandon us?" I tilted my head. "Listen carefully." She went quiet. "I won't sign anything. I won't be listed as the father. I won't take responsibility for a child if I'm not sure it's mine." Her voice trembled. "You're threatening me." "I'm stating terms," I corrected. "There's a difference." She sat back down hard. You're cruel. I smiled faintly. I'm consistent. She covered her face with her hands. You're ruining everything, she said. I waited. She peeked through her fingers. How can you even think like this? Because I counted, I replied. And because of how you reacted. And because of what you said when you thought I wasn't listening. Tears welled in her eyes now, real ones, or at least convincing. You're supposed to protect me, she said. I am, I said. I'm protecting myself too. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. That was fine. I recognized myself for the first time in weeks. I'm not changing my position, I said. You can scream, cry, accuse me of being heartless. It won't move the line. She swallowed. And if I say no? I didn't hesitate. Then we're done. The words landed cleanly. No echo, no regret. She stared at me for a long time, trying to decide which battle to fight. And for the first time since this started, she realized something important. I wasn't bluffing. She didn't answer me right away. That was the first sign. If she'd been innocent, this would have turned into a dramatic monologue about trust, love, and how offended she was. Instead, she went quiet. Too quiet. She sat there, eyes unfocused, like she was running numbers in her head instead of emotions. What if I don't want to? She asked finally. I shrugged. Then you don't have to. Her head snapped up. What? I'm not forcing you, I said calmly. I'm just telling you what I will and won't do. She frowned. So that's it? An ultimatum? I smiled slightly. No, an option. She stared at me like she was seeing a different person, because up until that moment, I'd always been cooperative, reasonable, the guy who tried to smooth things over. Now I wasn't smoothing anything. I was standing still. You'd really walk away? She asked. If there's no test, I said. Yes. She swallowed hard. You wouldn't even try to make it work? I am trying, I replied. This is me trying. She shook her head slowly, like she was disappointed in me. That's so cold. I nodded. I know. Cold is easier to survive than stupid. That landed. She looked away. Minutes passed. The TV kept playing silently, some actor mouthing lines no one was listening to. Finally, she exhaled. Fine, she said. We'll do the test. She said it like she was agreeing to eat vegetables she hated. I nodded once. All right. She studied my face, waiting for relief. Gratitude. Some emotional release. I gave her nothing. That confused her more than anger would have. You're not happy? She asked. I thought about it, then answered honestly. No. She looked hurt. You wanted this. I wanted certainty, I said. Those aren't the same thing. She crossed her arms. You already decided, didn't you? I didn't deny it. I already accepted the most likely outcome, I said. That way, I'm not shocked later. That scared her. I could see it. Because fear thrives on hope. And I'd just removed mine. The next few days were strange. Not hostile, not affectionate, transactional. We talked about logistics, clinics, costs, appointments. Like two co-workers handling an awkward HR issue. She didn't fight it anymore, didn't cry, didn't accuse me. She became careful again, controlled, and that told me everything. The day of the test, she barely spoke. We sat in the waiting room, chairs spaced too far apart, like strangers who'd accidentally synced schedules. She kept her eyes on the floor. I watched people walk in and out. I felt nothing. No dread, no anticipation, just a quiet sense of inevitability. She glanced at me once. Are you nervous? I shook my head. No, that wasn't a lie. They took the samples. It was quick, clinical, boring, which felt oddly appropriate. As we left the clinic, she said, "It'll take a bit to get the results." I know, I replied. She hesitated. What if it comes back positive? I stopped walking and looked at her. If it's mine, I said, I'll step up. Fully. Her shoulders relaxed for a fraction of a second. Then I added, "But your reaction to all of this won't disappear." That tension came right back. We went home, we waited. The boundary was set. All that remained was paperwork. When the email finally came, I didn't open it right away. I made coffee, sat down, took a sip. Then I clicked. The result was clear, unambiguous. Not mine. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel triumph. I felt validated. Like reality had finally aligned with my memory. I looked up at her. She was watching my face like a verdict was being read. "Well," she whispered. I closed the laptop. "I'm not the father." She closed her eyes. Just for a second. That was enough. She didn't scream. That surprised me more than anything else. No collapse to the floor. No dramatic denial. No sudden reinvention of the truth. She just sat there, silent. Like someone whose last defense mechanism had finally shut down. "I can explain," she said eventually. I believed her. Not because I thought the explanation would change anything, but because people always can explain. They're remarkably creative when the facts stop cooperating. "You don't need to," I said. She looked up, startled. "What?" "I already understand," I continued. "Enough." She shook her head weakly. "It's not what you think." I smiled, not warmly, not cruelly, just tired. "That's the thing," I said. "It's exactly what I think." She opened her mouth again, closed it, tried a different angle. "I was scared," she said. "I didn't know how to tell you." I nodded. "I know." "You don't understand." "I do," I interrupted gently. "You were afraid of consequences." She swallowed. "I didn't want to lose you." That almost made me laugh. Almost. "You weren't afraid of losing me," I said. "You were afraid of the test." Her face tightened. "That's not fair." I tilted my head. If the child had been mine, the test would have been a joke. I stood up and went to the bedroom, grabbed a bag, not in a rush, no shaking hands, just methodical movements. She followed me. "So that's it?" she asked. "You're just leaving?" I zipped the bag. "Yes." "No counseling? No talking it through?" I looked at her. Really looked. "We already talked," I said. "You just didn't realize it yet." Tears finally came then, real ones this time. "You're being so calm about this," she whispered. "How can you be so calm?" I thought about that for a moment. "Because the worst part already happened," I said. That did it. She didn't follow me to the door. She didn't beg. She just sat there, crying quietly, like someone who knew the credits were already rolling. I walked out. No dramatic exit. No last words shouted down the hallway. Just a door closing. Later, people asked me how I handled it so well, how I stayed so composed. The truth? I didn't lose my marriage the day I left. I lost it the moment she heard DNA test and panicked. Everything after that was just confirmation. And here's the part no one warns you about. The most painful thing isn't betrayal. It's realizing that when honesty mattered most, someone chose fear instead. Not fear of hurting you, fear of being exposed. That's when you know there's nothing left to save. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.